I'm so angry with her that I'm ready to kill her, I growled angrily, taking another sip of beer. Hey Johnny, don't even say those things, Billy said, which was kind of funny because Billy had a hotter temp than I did. In high school, he constantly got into fights, and the slightest thing could set him off. But she's cheating on me, I whined. Looks like she's been fucking her doctor friend for a couple of months now. How could she do this to me? Billy ordered us another glass and, when we sat down at the table, asked me to tell him what happened. I didn't really want to go into details, but still, oddly enough, I felt drawn to talk about it. Something like a conversation about a previous operation. So I started from the beginning. I always thought Doris and I had a very good marriage. Of course, we fought from time to time about things. What couple doesn't? But then we always kissed and made up, and that's all that mattered. In terms of money, we had a pretty good life together. I dropped out of college my sophomore year. This academic stuff just wasn't for me. But I didn't really need a degree because I am, as they say, a born salesman. I eventually got a job at one of the 2 largest car dealerships in the city and soon began making good money. So Doris and I got engaged when she was a freshman and married when she was a senior. The funny thing is that Doris also went into sales. After graduating from university, she went to work for one of the large pharmaceutical companies. This basically meant that she sold prescription drugs. Anyway, we weren't rich or anything, but we were doing well. No children yet, but it will come. At least that's what I thought. The first thing that attracted me to Doris was her figure. When I first met her, she was slim and fit. What's even better is that even after 6 years of marriage, she remained that way. Some of it was good genes, I think, but she also became obsessed with working out. She goes to the gym 3, 4, even 5 days a week. The good news is that her body was tight and sexy, not like that pumped-up bodybuilder that makes me sick, but more like that Jillian Michaels woman you see on TV all the time. I really liked it. But the bad news was that all this exercise seemed to really wear her out. Lately, when I wanted to enjoy that hot body in bed, all she wanted to do was sleep. But as I just found out, there was another reason why she didn't want to do the horizontal mambo with me. That reason was Morris Fisher, one of the doctors she saw regularly. I accidentally stumbled upon an affair between my wife and the good doctor. Even though she is the smartest in our family, Doris is the type of person who always forgets things. I can't even count the number of times we had to look for her lost cell phone or go back somewhere to pick up a purse that had been left behind. So it wasn't unusual that she left her laptop at home when she left for work this morning. But what was a surprise was the letter that I found in my mailbox entitled, "It was so hot yesterday." Of course, I opened it right away. In short, it became apparent that he and Dr. Fisher had been using email to arrange meetings at the motel for months. From the contents of the other letters I read, it was quite obvious that they were not meeting to compare the relative merits of different drugs. When I dug through her email and saw what she was saying to him, it also became clear that this was much more than just a casual hookup. They were both in the midst of a full-blown affair. "I didn't expect this," I moaned pitifully to Billy. "What should I do, Guy?" "Well, if it were my wife, I'd give her a fish sandwich right before I tossed her to the curb," Billy said smugly. "No, I could never hit Doris," I said. "I'll just have to divorce her and live my own life. But I would really like to get back at Dr. Morris Fisher for ruining my marriage." While I was sitting and drinking, an idea came to my mind. I leaned across the table and quietly said to Billy, "Hey buddy, can you help me get a little revenge?" "I think I know how we could make sure it doesn't affect us." Billy's eyes sparkled. "Tell me what you came up with," he said impatiently. My idea was simple. We'd use Doris' email to lure the good doctor back to the motel, only we'd be the one waiting, not her. We'll tie him up, take his clothes, and leave him there in his underwear. Then we'll call the TV news so they can film him when the police rescue him. This will show the world his true colors. "But he'll find out we did it," Billy protested. "I've thought of everything," I assured him. "We will be wearing ski masks and surgical gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. Everything will be perfect." Okay, smart guy, but you're forgetting one thing, Billy said. If he receives a letter from your Doris, he will guess that it was you who sent it. Perhaps, I agreed. But even if so, it is unlikely that he will say anything. If he does that, he'll have to admit that he had an affair, and I'm willing to bet his wife won't be too happy about that. Billy looked at me shrewdly. Maybe you're right. Besides, he may suspect you, but he won't be able to prove anything. Especially if I delete the email from Doris's computer after I send it, I said triumphantly. Come on, Billy said. I hate fucking cheaters. That damn doc owes you for fucking your wife. Okay, here's how we'll do it. I'll email him from Doris's computer tonight and set up a meeting at their regular motel right after dinner. Tomorrow morning you will go and book a room. When he appears, we will capture him. And then we'll cut off his penis, right? Billy asked impatiently. No, I said hastily. We don't want to get caught. We will gag him, strip him, tie him to a chair, and leave him. I'll make an anonymous call to the police about a disturbance in the room, and you call your TV buddy and tell him the police are investigating something serious at the motel. It'll be all over the news. He'll be the laughingstock of the whole town. If he kept his mouth shut, he would still be very embarrassed because everyone would know that he was hiding in the hotel. And if he tells them why he went to the motel in the first place, everyone will know about his affair with Doris, and then I will throw her out. Sounds great, Billy said readily. Cannot wait. Just remember one thing, Billy, I added. When you rent this room, don't use your credit card. Why is this? I tried not to roll my eyes. Because you don't really want the police to find out who rented the room where the doctor was captured, I said impatiently. Well, yes, Billy said. I mentally shook my head. Billy was a great guy, but he won't win the Nobel Prize anytime soon. That evening, when I returned home, I acted as if nothing had happened. I even hinted to Doris that I would like to have some fun in bed after dinner, but she quickly rejected the idea, as I expected. I didn't know if Fisher had tired her, or if she was so fixated on him that she didn't want me to touch her. Either way, I'll give this one up, traitor, as soon as I take revenge on her lover. After she went to bed, I found her rolling suitcase, the same one she used to carry all her drug samples and doctor crap. Of course, the laptop was inside. When I ran it, I found that the email was password protected, but I expected that. Due to her forgetfulness, Doris kept the passwords written down on a piece of paper tucked into her wallet. I pulled out a piece of paper, typed in the password, and bingo. Has entered. I quickly started typing out my little invitation to the love doctor, and I was pretty sure I knew how to express it so that he couldn't resist. But halfway there, I stopped abruptly. We had a big problem. Billy was going to get a motel room tomorrow, but I needed to know right now which number to give the good doctor. Keep it up, dumbass! I cursed myself. And you won't win the Nobel Prize this year either. I quickly called Billy. When he answered the phone, I asked, "Can you talk?" "Of course I can," he replied. "Can't you hear me?" No, I almost shouted. I mean, can you talk without Phyllis hearing you?" "Oh," he said. "She's not here, speak up." When I explained my dilemma, Billy said, "Just make an anonymous call to the doctor tomorrow and tell him the room number." "Yes, that will work," I said sarcastically. "Don't you think that he might suspect something was wrong if some man called him and told him where to meet my wife to do sex?" "Well, yes," Billy said, and I suppressed a groan, and then it dawned on me. "I understand," I said impatiently. "When you go to the motel tomorrow, rent a room for 2 days. Then I will write to the doctor tomorrow evening about the appointment for the next day and which room to go to." "Okay, but what will we do with the room tomorrow?" "We won't do anything," I said, trying to contain my irritation. "Well, I think it's a waste of time," Billy said. "Besides, I don't think my credit card can afford 2 days." "No credit cards, Billy." I screamed and then covered my mouth with my hand because I didn't want to wake Doris. "Listen, Billy, if you don't have enough money, I'll give it to you, but only in cash, not with a credit card. Don't forget, pay in cash," He agreed, but I had a bad feeling. However, Billy did what I told him and called me back the next day with the room number. "It's not a problem, Johnny. The receptionist didn't even look at me and I paid in cash as we agreed. And here's the thing, we have room 101. It's at the very end, so it should be very quiet." "Sounds great, buddy. Well done. I will send this letter tonight and you take what you agreed on." "What else, Johnny?" I let out a deep sigh, but managed to maintain my composure. "Duct tape and your camera," I reminded him. "I'll bring surgical gloves and ski masks for us." "Oh yes," he said. After hanging up the phone, I cursed quietly. If he says, "Oh yeah," one more time, I swear I'll scream. Doris went to bed early again, so I had no problem texting Dr. Fisher. In the letter, I promised him hot sex, like he had never had before. If only he would show up in room 101 at the motel tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. "I'm going to sweep you off your feet," I wrote, and this phrase made me laugh all night. When the big day arrived, everything no longer seemed so funny to me. I started wondering if I was going to do something really stupid. But when I remembered all those love letters between two traitors, my anger flared up again. Dr. Fisher deserved all the humiliation he was about to suffer, and so did Doris, for that matter. I was a faithful husband who was wronged. They deserved what was coming to them. Around noon, I called Billy on his cell phone to make sure everything was ready. He was supposed to come to the dealership at 12:30 and pretend to be a customer so I could take him for a test drive. This was our legend, and I wanted to make sure everything was okay. "Where are you, Billy? Are you home?" "No, I spent the night in a motel room," he answered nonchalantly. "What?" I shouted. "Why did you do that?" "Well, I thought it would be a shame to leave it empty. Besides, Phyllis and I had a fight, and I needed to get out of the house." Again, all I could do was shake my head. Billy's wife was a pretty little nurse who worked at the hospital. Doris knew her because they both worked out at the same gym. As far as I could tell, Phyllis seemed like a good woman, but she and Billy were always fighting about something. However, I didn't like the idea of him leaving all the evidence in the motel room. I watched the forensics and knew what they might find. "Billy," I said sternly, "I thought we agreed that we didn't want to leave any traces in the room." "Well, yes," Billy said, and I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. "Listen, Billy, clean up your mess, wipe everything you touched, and then go to the car dealership. Remember, you must be here exactly at 12:30. Despite my concerns, Billy arrived at the showroom promptly at 12:30. I signed up for a demo and we rushed to the motel. When we got there, I handed Billy a pair of surgical gloves and pulled on mine. Then we entered the room. It was a mess, as I expected. At first, I was afraid that Fisher might show up early, but when has the doctor ever shown up on time? Be that as it may, working together, we tried to put everything in order before he arrived. Billy and I closed all the blinds and curtains in the room, and then I turned off all the lamps. The last thing I did was adjust the small latch to keep the door slightly open. We then pulled on our ski masks and retreated around the corner. It was very dark except for the light leaking from under the door. As we waited in silence, Billy surprised me when he leaned over and whispered in my ear, "It's really creepy here." It took all my strength not to choke him. "Quiet, Billy," I hissed. "He could be outside right now." "Oh, well, yes." Before I could answer, we heard footsteps in the hallway. I shushed Billy and pointed at the camera in his hand. He nodded, and I hoped that meant he remembered what he was supposed to do. I peeked around the corner. At that moment, the door opened, and a man entered the room. "Hey, Doris, where are you, sexy lady?" he called playfully. I nudged Billy to get ready. "I'm here," I said in a whisper. And when he turned in our direction, Billy turned on the camera. The flash hit the doctor square in the face, and he screamed as the bright light blinded him. I waited until he stopped rubbing his eyes, and when he lowered his hands, I hit him. I'm a pretty big guy, and I've been in fights, so I knew how to handle myself. I must have added a little extra to this blow because the doc fell like a stone onto the carpet. I started dancing, swinging my aching fist. "It hurts like hell," I moaned. Luckily, Billy was all business. He made sure the room door was closed and locked, then returned and checked on his lover. He whistled. "You really nailed it, Johnny," he said admiringly. He turned off like a light. "Quiet," I hissed, "and don't call me by name." "Sorry, Johnny." "Come on," I commanded. "Help me take off his clothes." We took off our ski masks and tried to undress the doctor. You'd be surprised how difficult it is to undress a limp body. But after much tugging, we stripped the doctor down to his blue striped boxers. Neither of us wanted to touch his private parts, so we stopped. Then we sat him on a chair and taped him down. Even though he seemed to be unconscious, I didn't want to risk him waking up and screaming, so I also taped his mouth. "Okay," I said, "we're done. Let's throw his clothes in the trash can in the parking lot and then head back to the dealership." "Are you sure you don't want to cut that bastard's dick off?" Billy asked, pulling out a sinister-looking folding knife from his pocket. "Put it away, Billy," I said hastily. "We already talked about this. All we want is to humiliate him, not maim him." "Okay," Billy said, and, to my relief, he put the knife away. We gathered the rest of the doctor's clothes and headed for the door. When we left, I used the metal latch to keep the door from closing. "Why did you do that?" Billy asked. "So that the police and reporters can easily enter the room," I told him. "Well, yes," Billy said. I sighed nervously, and we headed to the back door of the motel. On the way back to the dealership, I threw the doctor's clothes, gloves, and ski masks into the trash. When we returned, Billy climbed into his pickup truck to leave. I leaned over to him to make sure he remembered what to do next. "I'm going to make an anonymous call to 911 to report a disturbance at the motel. As soon as you get home, call your TV buddy. Tell him you just saw the police pull up to the motel, and it looked like something serious had happened." He nodded, and I could only hope that he understood everything correctly. The test drive I took with Billy lasted a little longer than usual, but no one said anything about it. I mentally breathed a sigh of relief. Looks like we got away with it. The rest of the day seemed to drag on forever, but finally the day was over and I hopped in the car to head to the bar to meet Billy. I was so excited that I almost felt high. The thought of seeing the good doc being led out of a dingy motel in his underpants on the 10 o'clock news almost made my mouth water. It would be even better to see Doris's face as she watches it with me. Billy, of course, was already sitting at the table and waiting for me with a beer. "Well," I asked impatiently, "did you call your friend, as we agreed?" "Yeah," he said, and took a long sip from the bottle. "Did the reporters film the doctor leaving the motel?" "Certainly." "Well, what did your friend say? What did Fisher look like?" Billy just shook his head. "It's hard to say in a body bag." "Body bag? What body bag?" "The body bag in which the doctor lay." I stared at him in horror. "He was dead, Johnny," Billy said. "He had to be carried out in a bag." "How is this possible, Billy? When we left, he was fine, except for a bruise on his jaw." "Someone must have come into the room after we left and finished him off, Johnny." When my friend called me back to thank me for the tip, he said that the maid had found the doctor with his throat cut. This will be the top story on today's news. To this day, the only time in my life I've ever felt woozy was when I licked really hard while playing football in high school. But then I felt like I was going to faint. The worst thing that could ever happen. I took a long sip of beer to calm myself down and stared at Billy. "Do the police know who did this?" "Nope," Billy answered calmly. "My friend said that no one saw or heard anything." "Listen, Billy, this is bad, very bad. We could be in real trouble." "Why?" he asked. "We didn't kill him." "You and I know this, but the police don't know this," I said irritably. "If they find out that we tied him up, they'll probably try to pin the murder on us." "Oh, well, yes." I wanted to lean across the table and strangle him, but I knew now was not the time to lose control. "Look, Billy, we have to keep this a secret. You won't tell anyone. Not Phyllis, not your TV news buddy, not anyone. If you spill the beans, we could end up in jail, you know?" "Of course, Johnny, of course." "I really hope that the police will immediately find whoever killed him. As soon as they make an arrest, we will be out of danger." "Don't worry, Johnny, I'll keep my mouth shut," he said, doing that stupid hand and mouth gesture we learned in 5th grade. I thought I was going to throw up. When I went home, I could only pray that Billy would remain silent, but I doubted that he would be able to hold out much longer. I was sure that if the cops ever took him in for questioning, we were doomed. Why the hell was I trying to get revenge on that bastard doctor? Why didn't I just file for divorce from Doris and leave it at that? Doris! Heck, I was planning on meeting her tonight about her cheating. Well, now I'll have to leave it. I just have to go home and act fat, dumb, and happy around her. How painful it is. I hoped I could fake it well enough to fool her. When I returned home, everything turned out to be even worse than I expected. Before I could enter, Doris ran up to me and burst into tears. "What's the matter, honey? What's happened?" "Oh, Johnny," she sobbed. "This is so terrible." This dear Dr. Fisher, to whom I always turned, was killed. It's all over the news. "I can't believe this," I said, trying to sound shocked and sympathetic. "What's happened?" "His body was found in the motel room," she moaned. "His throat was cut. I know I shouldn't have said this, but I couldn't resist." "They found him in the motel room?" "It looked like he was going to meet someone for a little afternoon fun." "You do not know him," she snapped. "Be that as it may, at a time like now, you need to throw away bad thoughts." "Sorry, dear. I didn't mean to take such a terrible tragedy lightly," I said remorsefully. In fact, it annoyed me that I had to speak well of him. I didn't want to kill him, but it didn't bother me too much. But what really rubbed salt into my wounds was that I knew the real reason why Doris was so upset. This went on all evening. Every time she entered the room, Doris's eyes were full of tears. When we watched the news, she hid her face in a handkerchief. It was sickening, especially when the TV reporters started talking about what a terrible loss his death was to society. It shouldn't be like this, I thought. They should be talking about what a vile traitor he was, and not praising him to the skies. This is simply unfair. Doris went to bed without even having dinner, so I had to make myself a sandwich so I wouldn't starve. But to tell the truth, I wasn't that hungry myself. In addition to the stress of having to pretend to be a caring husband around Doris, I was terribly worried about what might happen next. Billy and I tried to be careful, but what if we left some evidence behind? What will I tell the police if they come after me? Who would believe that we tied up Fisher but didn't hurt him, other than that light blow to the jaw? After a sleepless night, I went to work the next day, but things weren't any easier there either. Dr. Fisher had bought cars from us before, and his murder was the main topic of conversation. Everyone had their own theory about who did it and why. I thought about coming up with some alternative theory in hopes of confusing people, but for the life of me, I couldn't come up with anything. In the end, I decided to remain silent in the hope that all this would pass quickly. When I met Billy at the bar that evening, it was obvious that he was eager to see me. "You'll never guess that I found out about the doctor's murder," he greeted me loudly when I approached the table. "Shut up, Billy," I hissed. "I think we won't talk about this with anyone." "Of course, but you have to hear it. My friend found out something that the police had never told anyone before. Despite my nervousness, I couldn't help but be curious." "Well, what's the matter?" He leaned across the table towards me. "When the police found his body, the killer carved the word slut into his chest. They believe it was a revenge killing." Wow, that was a shock. I sat back in my chair and tried to think through the consequences. That's not all. The cops are pretty sure the killer is a man. They don't think a woman would be strong enough to knock him out, strip him, and put him in a chair. They figure it would take a pretty big guy to do all this. This latest news made me dizzy. Oh God, Billy, now I'm in. If they ever link us to this case, I will most likely end up in the electric chair. "But you didn't kill," Billy protested. "Yes, but how can I prove it? I had a motive, I fit the description, and I had an opportunity. All they're missing is the murder weapon. I watch true crime shows on TV," Billy said. "You probably threw away the murder weapon." "Billy, this won't help me. I didn't kill, did I?" "Oh, well, yes. If I was scared last night, today was even worse. Hell, if I looked at all the evidence, even I myself would think I was guilty. The only positive thing was that I had the day off tomorrow. and didn't have to listen to all this endless murder speculation. But it didn't help me fall asleep easily. The next day, Doris went to the gym, probably to try to get rid of her sadness through exercise. I decided to try to take my mind off my worries for a while by doing some yard work. It was a beautiful day, and the lawn definitely needed mowing, so I stripped down to my old shorts and got to work in the yard. While I was cutting the grass, a car stopped in front of our house, and an attractive young woman got out. She moved towards me, and I quickly turned off the lawnmower engine. "Is your wife at home?" she asked, looking at me carefully. "No, sorry," I told her with a smile. "You just missed each other." "I'm her husband, Johnny. I am alone." She reached into her purse and pulled out a card. "I'm Detective Monica Ferguson. Could you ask her to call me when she gets back? I'd like to ask her a few questions about Dr. Morris Fisher." I trembled with fear. "Why do you want to talk to your wife about him?" I asked, too hastily. The detective smiled and patted my hand. "Don't worry," she said. "We're just trying to talk to everyone who had contact with Dr. Fisher. His office staff told us that your wife is a pharmaceutical company representative and visited him regularly." "Oh yes," I said. "Damn," I thought. "That sounds as stupid as Billy said." As I mentally berated myself, she continued to look at me appraisingly, and I wondered if she was flirting with me or assessing my criminal potential. Finally, she asked, "Did you know Dr. Fisher?" "Of course I knew him," I said, and immediately realized what I had said. I mean, I knew about him through Doris, but I never met him. She looked at me a little longer and then said, "Don't forget to ask your wife to call me." Then, just about to leave, she paused and added, "See ya." I looked at her as she walked away. Why the hell did I say I knew Fisher? I asked myself. I wonder if that sounded suspicious. And what did she mean by "see you"? Needless to say, the peace and tranquility I achieved working in the yard is long gone. That evening, the local evening news featured an interview with the police chief about Fisher's murder. "We have discovered important new evidence and hope to make an arrest soon," he said pompously. My blood pressure was trying to climb Everest. I couldn't wait to meet Billy and see if his friend knew anything about this. Even before we sat down at the table, I began bombarding my friend with questions. "The boss is bluffing," Billy said decisively. "My friend says they have nothing new. They're just hoping to get someone out of hiding. But the guys from the crime branch had enough time to comb through the motel room with a fine-toothed comb. Maybe they discovered something. My friend says that so many guests stayed in this room, and it was cleaned so often that they didn't find anything useful," Billy said. Then a worried expression appeared on his face. "You look bad, Johnny. You need to calm down a little. Don't let this thing get to you." "It's easy for you to say," I snapped. "A police detective didn't come to your house yesterday." "Was it a woman named Monica?" he asked. When I nodded in surprise, he continued, "Yes, the same one was in the hospital. She even talked to Phyllis. They have nothing. They are just grasping at straws." As I left the bar, I kept thinking about what Billy said. How could he be so calm when I was going crazy with worry? How could he be so sure that his friend really knew the whole story? I eventually came to the conclusion that Billy's optimism was the direct opposite of his IQ. And since I snuck a peek into his IQ file before he was expelled from school, the thought scared the crap out of me. After another sleepless night and several handfuls of antacids, I knew I had to do something. There's no way I'm going to hold out until the police catch the killer, especially since the one they're most likely to catch is me. My only hope of saving my neck is to try to find the real killer myself. The only problem with this plan was that I had no idea how to handle a murder investigation. Sure, it looked easy on TV, but how would I do it in real life?